The advantage with our product is we can immediately help the market players to fulfill the government request. With our hydrogen technology, we reduce fuel. You can calculate that you need for your regular distance, driving from A to B, less fuel, which of course is cost saving.
Welcome to the Market Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. How long does a company get to sell the future before the market demands the present? That question is sitting right on top of dynaCERT Inc. right now. Years of visibility, years of bold claims around emissions reduction and fuel efficiency, a steady stream of announcements, partnerships, pilots. And yet investors are still waiting for that clean, undeniable moment where this turns into scaled, consistent business performance. So here's where we begin. Back with me after our last conversation at PDAC in Toronto, where the tone was optimistic and the opportunity set was expanding, is Mr. Bernd Krüper himself, president of dynaCERT. Welcome back, Bernd. It's always lovely to sit with you. How are you?
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Very well. Hope you too. And good talking with you and the audience again.
Absolutely. Now, the last time we did speak was in PDAC, and that was, a mention of a few different things there. And one of those things was around the defense sector and that you're really entering that conversation. So this is where this conversation ahead will carry more weight. I mean, we're really going to pull back the curtain here on quite a few things. So here's where I'm going to start. You're not just talking about clean tech adoption anymore. You're now stepping into that defense conversation I just spoke about while simultaneously really pushing hard into that Southeast Asia, specifically Vietnam market. I mean, that raises the bar across the board for sure. There's different markets, there's different expectations, there's zero room for execution gaps. So Bernd, I want to start where investors are focused right now. You've made it clear that Vietnam is a priority. Well, why Vietnam? I mean, what makes it one of the most strategically important markets globally right now, ahead of even North America or Europe?
Yeah, Lindsay, thanks for that question. And of course, Vietnam and Southeast Asia is a very, very impressive region, and of course, far away from Canada. But nevertheless, as we are an international and global company supplying to, of course, Canada and Northern America, as well as since years successfully to Southern America, and having a setup also in Europe, majorly in Germany, with quite some business in France and other countries. Of course, there's the path via the Middle East, Dubai, and other countries where we have some installations to Southeast Asia, and there specifically to Vietnam. First, why Vietnam? On the one side, Vietnam is very well developing, as most of the audience will know. They have growth rates since years now of 8 to 10%, which is, of course, very impressive. Secondly, they have quite a huge fleet of diesel as internal combustion engines, majorly diesel driven. That means roughly 3.5 million trucks, numerous gensets and various applications which we are targeting for. And they have, with their communistic party, defined now an emission reduction target with their newest 5 years plan, which wants to have a serious reduction in emission and pollution. And therefore, we have the right technology, as we think, and thanks God, the market thinks as well, to support that target.
Well, I mean, that's great insights right there. And I'm going to hold this here just a little bit longer and really go past, the obvious and the headlines. What are you actually seeing on the ground from fleet operators, industrial players, and even government stakeholders that tells you this is real traction and not just another early stage interest?
First, we conducted various technical seminars, means introducing the technology, but also inviting the right people. Means governmental emission regulators. Secondly, logistics, fleets owners. Thirdly, various governmental organizations like the police, like various fleet owners, port equipment, all these relevant target markets who have to execute the emission reduction. And of course, everybody is happy in doing something reasonable for the environment and in parallel saving cost, which is reducing fuel, which is offered by our product. And therefore, it's combining cost reduction and doing emission reductions, which is a clear target in Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much education still around Vietnam. There's not a lot that we know about Vietnam. So it's great to have those sort of boots on the ground insights for sure. And you've been there multiple times. Um, I'm going to build on this just a little bit because you're framing this as more than just a single market entry. Is Vietnam the first real breakthrough in a broader Asian expansion story? And really, actually, Bernd, if it is, what are the concrete next steps to scale across Asia? I'm talking about partnerships, regulatory alignment, government buy-in. What needs to happen here for this to move from one market win into a repeatable regional strategy?
As the base of the relationship and entering specifically into the Vietnamese market was and is a very close relationship between Canada, Export Development Canada, dynaCERT ourselves, of course, and the Embassy of Canada in Vietnam and various Vietnamese governmental organizations. Therefore, various Vietnamese key industrial players have been to dynaCERT, to our headquarters in Toronto, and were very happy and appreciating what they did see. And based on that, and with the support, as said, in very close partnership with the Canadian Embassy to Vietnam, we invited relevant people, as mentioned before, and we started this technical explanation. And secondly, in the discussion with the government, and so maybe some of the audience have seen, we signed recently also an MOU with the very well-reputed University of Technology in Ho Chi Minh City, which has also a lot of experience on renewable energy, on renewable fuels, on internal combustion engines. And therefore, we also adjust the product there to the specific needs. We do together joint testings. Of course, our product, which is in hardware called HydraGEN and in software or telematics called HydraLytica, is well proven. And we have, with roughly 2,000 installations globally, of course, a lot of experience and quality. But it's important to know that in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, for instance, the fuel quality is different, and there's, of course, some adjustments which are different to Canada or to Europe, and therefore we are teaming up for the local and national needs and demands. And on the other side, maybe it's a role model for further expansion of our technology, because it's principally a clear business development activity. Means we did a proper market analysis, as we said before, roughly 3.5 million diesel engine in with propulsion systems and population, which is of course a huge target. And as you said before, not only having a few pilots, but really scaling up into bigger volumes. Secondly, having with the embassy and with Export Development Canada and Vietnamese organizations a proper cooperation between Canada and Vietnam. Thirdly, picking up and selecting and having various applicants for it on proper service and installation partners, local ones, the one with whom we do most of the installations and the training is an MAN partner in Vietnam. Therefore, these guys know what is a truck, know what is a truck engine. We have there developed and selected and trained some sales agents, means having really the combination of local power and access. And secondly, the technical backup and, of course, also global experiences for also global companies. Therefore, it's the combination of really power on the ground in Vietnam and capable and competent people, and of course being backed up from our technical team and service and installation partners in Canada and elsewhere. And also from the management, we are also taking care very much, which is of course good signal to the market and to the government. And as I said, I'm also have been now within half a year, 4 times, multiple weeks there, and we are happy what we reached. But this is of course the first step, not the end. It's the first step
Very
of
first step.
much more to come.
Absolutely. Well, the backdrop here, it really does matter. I mean, diesel is still the reality in heavy transport and industrial operations, especially in emerging markets. At the same time, pressure to reduce emissions is accelerating so fast, so much more faster than we thought, especially with everything going on with shortages. So where does dynaCERT actually win in that tension? I mean, you mentioned one of your projects or your products, HydraGEN. So why is hydrogen positioned as a practical solution right now? And what is the actual real economic case for customers?
Yeah, first of all, of course, reducing diesel combustion or diesel fuel needs and requirements and making the combustion more efficient. What we do with our hydrogen system loves everybody. It reduces, of course, fuel consumption and by that cost. Secondly, with the unfortunate political developments, for instance, in the Middle East, with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz and the consecutive diesel price increase, this is, of course, an additional argument, hopefully not for the long term for the diesel price, but, of course, an additional argument to need to have as little diesel fuel burned as possible. Therefore, this helps, of course, and maybe the disadvantage of the before mentioned strong economic growth is in such a country like Vietnam and other countries, of course, more pollution based on more industrial production, and that's why the political party and why the regulatory authorities request a reduction in the pollution, and therefore there's the advantage with our product is we can immediately help to reduce emissions and pollution and helping the market players to fulfill the government's request. And that means they can continue with the existing truck fleet, with the existing gensets, and not needing to buy new full electric trucks, for instance, or pure hydrogen trucks, where we all know that not only in Vietnam, but also in Vietnam is not the electrical infrastructure for charging, the hydrogen not being there. And therefore, with our product, you need only distilled water, put it into the electrolysis, which our hydrogen product is based on, and then 2 hours mount, and then you can start to save fuel and to save emissions.
Well, I mean, that's a good point there for the audience that doesn't quite know. dynaCERT actually has a product where it goes right onto the combustion engine that's already there. And then the
Mhm.
emissions that come out are much cleaner. And the way Bernd put it, I mean, you're putting distilled water in there and it's a 2-hour installation. I mean, that's massive.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
how quickly are you seeing fleet operators seeing that ROI? I mean, why does that matter more also in markets like Vietnam more than anywhere else?
Yeah, first, as said, it's continuing with the existing fleet possible. Therefore, we have at our seminars we conducted, and as a newbie to the market, we had immediately close to as 50 to 100 relevant participants with short notice, and set really decision makers and technical capable people and from the regulatory authorities, which shows the demand and the need for such a technology in this market. Secondly, we recommend, and we did already 10 pilot installations. We recommend a pilot, not because we want to test our unit, this works, of course, but to test it and to convince the customers and the leads in the very specific usage they have. It's different whether you are the application is a genset or a heavy duty truck, or whether it's a mining truck, or oil and gas onshore equipment. All pilot installations, which we did and continue to do, of course, in Vietnam and elsewhere, but in this case also in Vietnam. And we have already a hand or two hands full of additional leads who want to have a pilot installation on their vehicles, on their gensets, on their fleets. Therefore, we have already the next pilot units on the water to be transported to Vietnam to short-term install the next pilots. And you asked how far could be such a ramp up. As on the one side, we see pilots quite significantly, which of course convinces the players in the right technology. And then it's usually We do 2-3 pilot installations per application. This is usually a 2 to 3 months period. Of course, we see impacts much faster at the user, but to be there very clear. And based on that positive impact, you get then the first batches of series supply. And we have there, as said, big, of course, also medium size, but very big governmentally backed Vietnamese companies, but also interesting to the audience, I'm sure. We also are supplying or having pilot installations and very likely soon series supply to very well-known global logistics companies. Therefore, potential is, as always with dynaCERT, huge, and we are quite convinced that we can participate in this potential.
And you know what? You made a good point. Transportation right now is, wow, it's under a spotlight for sure. How is that going to be sustainable? How can we make it more sustainable? All the things. And we spoke further in PDAC about a new conversation that you're entering, and that really raises the standard even further here. You're entering into a conversation around that defense application. That's a completely different level of accountability. And at the same time, you're asking the market to believe this technology could scale across Asia, potentially even becoming a standard for fleet optimizations, for sure right now, and emission reduction. So here's what I'm going to ask you directly, because this is a question we hear a lot. Bernd, what proof points do you have today that this technology can operate at the level across both commercial and defense environments? And where has the company overreached in the past when it comes to messaging versus actual delivery?
Yeah, maybe, of course, I will come back to the question on defense. Maybe, as you ask, for defense and commercial applications, also an additional word to logistics, because, as said, with the big truck and the big international logistics companies we are piloting in Vietnam, means they have, as you know, a huge variety of products and applications where our product fits to. Means we are installed and now there on trucks, of course, but also on port equipment, means container lifters. And, in ports is also very regulated emissions. And we are also in first discussions, or more than discussions, on inland waterway approaches. And we do have also internationally first pilot installations in inland waterways, which is also delivering very positive results, and of course huge demand and huge fleet. And talking about inland waterway and marine application, of course, as we all know, there's a commercial usage, same as a military or defense usage. Therefore, the defense application itself is, of course, unfortunately, an extreme growing application, and we are happy that we can help and support there as well in helping the defense. Principally, we have a few topics. With our hydrogen technology, we reduce fuel. That means principally with commercial applications, you can calculate that you need for your regular distance driving from A to B less fuel, which of course is cost saving. For the military or defense application, it's the other way around. Means you can reach with the same amount of fuel more distance, as you can drive longer until you have to fuel again, which of course is a huge advantage because you have more reach, and tanks and other vehicles need a lot of fuel. Therefore, it's really expanding the reach, which helps, of course, the safety of the vehicle and the more of the soldiers. And secondly, of course, to the expensive vehicle as well. What usually in defense is a topic is how many fuels and full electric installations you can carry and you want to have with you in the field. And therefore, that's why more or less everything, or a lot of vehicles are diesel driven, and will continue, of course, to be diesel driven, because you can't transport whatever 10 different fuel types or full electric installations into the battlefield. And there's exactly also one of our advantages, which the armies like concerning our product. It's you need, of course, water, which you usually have. It's you need a distiller to make distilled water out of it. But besides that, you don't need any additional fuel. You don't have to bring in electric infrastructure with you to charge it, or you don't have to transport pure hydrogen to the operation. And as a lot of guys will know, hydrogen principally in 100% hydrogen, it's quite explosive if you would shoot at it. Therefore, our advantage is, as said, you need water, you need distilling of the water, distilled water, and then the very little portion of hydrogen is immediately burnt. Therefore, it's also a very safe application. And that's why we are in very serious discussions with armies and defense OEMs already.
I love all this. I love that the narrative is shifting and there's a clearer message coming out with some actual execution behind it. And, Bernd, there is another topic that investors are watching very closely right now, and I have to address it. And I know it's a tough one, but the last financials go back to December 2025. Since then, you've had continued announcements, continued expansion narratives, but no update financial snapshots. So where does the business actually stand today? Cash positive, burn rate, revenue visibility, and when are those investors going to see numbers that reflect the current reality of this company?
Yeah, fair question. Of course, investors want to see some increasing stock market price, same as us as a company, and I'm invested personally, by the way, as well. Therefore, we did develop a lot of topics, of course, in the last 20 years. Secondly, we also did a transformation, let's say, also in the management and partially in the supervisory board. We made now, as announced, Kevin Unrat in his 40s as the new CEO. We brought in additional technical capabilities, majorly on fuel cell knowledge, on pure hydrogen, on combustion, hydrogen impacts into the combustion engine, means thermodynamical. Therefore, we used the money being raised and invested to develop the product further in the hardware and the software. And it's not only Vietnam, of course, where we have expansion and a good footprint now. It's also Mexico, as we announced. We have there also delivered contracts with three-digit numbers already. We expanded in France. We are, of course, also in Latin America quite active. Therefore, the figures of the year will become better from the volume out of the pilot seats. Of course, we will get into series orders, and with series orders, you have not more cost or relative per unit. You have less cost as with a pilot, which is quite expensive to support and to take care of. Therefore, we will get into series orders out of the seeded pilots. And this will help, of course, to increase the volume, and by increasing the volume, the turnover. And as said, with less cost per unit, we will also increase the margin. And we are also in the process of restructuring internally and acting more in the interest of realizing as a supporting pilots and realizing turnover. And this will and has to result in more volume and in more turnover and more profit. And then it should have an impact and will have an impact on the stock price. Maybe some of the audience have seen, we had recently, or if you have a look at the stock price development of the last weeks and months, there was, based on our announcement, which are based on, of course, positive activities, the stock price increased, and we are working on to keep it and to further develop it from the business side as well as from the stock market or the share price.
So, that's all really great momentum, but, at the same time, I'm going to bring it back to the question, Bernd, what is the burn rate? Where is the revenue visibility? And when are investors going to see those financials coming out? And I'm only saying this because, you're set in a position right now where the narrative needs to change. And this isn't about what could happen. It's about what's actually happening.
Mhm. Yeah, in the course of the year, we will have further developments, and we will see that. As said, I mentioned before, the pilots are using usually 3 months. Then is, of course, decision making, and the disadvantage with the advantage of doing business with global companies is, of course, the headquarters and the sales process or procurement process is sometimes whatever to be discussed with various parties in various countries, but definitely in the course of the year, we will see much better figures, and we will have impacts on the stock market price and on the turnover. And the cash burn, also there is still a cash burn, but the cash burn is significantly reduced as we are on the way to realizing turnover out of the deals. And secondly, we developed, or we finished, or close to finish, or invested into further development of the product, and we also did assemble already various units, which means the costs are already there. Now we will sell them, which reduces the costs per unit, and as everybody knows, the turnover with less cost gives better margin.
Well, this is all great news for sure, Bernd. I know it's not an easy conversation sometimes. However, I do really appreciate you stepping into this and giving us all just a really bigger and deeper understanding of developments and realities of dynaCERT. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Lyndsay, for the discussion and all the trust, and of course, also to the audience. And always pleasure talking with you, and looking forward to our next session.
Now, Bernd, you're going to be on IIF May 20th, where the audience can go over, flip on, click in, and just learn more about dynaCERT and everything that's happening. So look forward to that. Make sure you go over to International Investment Forum and stay in the know. Again, that was Bernd Krüper, president of dynaCERT Inc., trading on the TSX under DYA and on the OTCQX under DYFSF. Keep watching this story. The narrative is shifting. Now it's about execution, it's about adoption, and it's about numbers. That's what's deciding who stays in the market and who gets left behind. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. This is the Market Frontlines. Subscribe to stay in the know with more topics just like this. We'll see you soon.